Hello everyone. This is a Defacto review with me, Jargal Dampadarja. For this week, we highlight two events happened last week in Mongolia. First is about whether Mongolia will restrict electricity supply or not. Second topic is about another supply chain problem for food in Mongolia. These are two questions I would like to share. Well, what happened in terms of electricity supply? Last Wednesday, after government sessions, the Minister for Food Energy, Mr. Chojil Suring, announced that the Russian company called Interrao had announced or had sent a letter that from tomorrow, from the next day, from December 12th, they cannot supply a usual amount of power which Mongolia requesting 345 megawatt power cannot be supplied because certain reasons, and only half of it can be supplied. And they said the reason is first reason is that two power stations in Russia had a certain technical problem, and the nearest system to Mongolia, Gusina-Ozersk, has own deficit. That's why they cannot supply that amount of power. When Mongolia requests, they were having supplying, but now they cannot do it the same amount. It will be twice less. So everybody was almost in panic because he said that because of the reason he will restrict power supply in the central zone of the country, which is covering six IMACs, Ulaanbaatar city completely, and it will also 6 IMAC, 150 SUMs. So the restriction will be for 3 hours in turn, and 124 also companies will be covered under this restriction. It was very, of course, not very happy news for Mongolians, in particular at the time when the temperature outside is reaching minus 40 degrees. Then what happened was, just next day, Minister Kozlov, who is the head of Intergovernmental Commission between Mongolia and Russia, this Mr. Kozlov was recently nominated, replacing Mrs. Abramchenko, who was the deputy prime minister, so one rank lower minister, suddenly announced that he said that no, we will not limit our supply to Mongolia, supply of energy to Mongolia. And secondly, the intergovernmental commissions of two countries are working on the issues. So we are a little bit relaxed, but however it raised the question whether really these two stations had the problems or not. If they had a problem, then how come that they cannot restrict the supply as they have said? So it is raising a question again. In any case, it's highlighting our complete dependence on the Russian supply of energy when we need. And we always need, because Mongolian total capacity of energy supply is 1 gigawatt. But our consumption is 1.5 in this time. It's a peak of consumption. So how come that Mongolia came to this situation? Minister Chojil Suring said that he's going to proposal that for Inner Mongolia can supply energy, electric energy. Inner Mongolia is supplying anyway to the project OT in the south of the country. They buy so far for the last 10 or more years from Inner Mongolia. We have not completed the contract, and the OT power stations supposed to be Tawantolwa, there is still on the paper. The only good news for recent months is we have now one BESS, which is a battery energy storage system of 100 megawatt capacity. And recently it was charged, and because it's a brand new one under EDB financing of 100 million US dollar. Chinese companies won the tender, which has a lot of experience. I saw their work all around China. They can do that best properly. First time last week they have switched on their battery storage, which was charged, and they have discharged some 70 megawatt of power to the central grid, which was only good news for last week. So the question raised again, what happened and why we are now, until now, we are in such a miserable situation that another country said that, well, we cannot supply you what you are asking. Well, it has two reasons. One, it's a power price, electric power price in Mongolia are quite low, in particular in comparison with the cost. That's why all power stations in Mongolia have a big debt to pay to the supplier of coal and a transporting company, basically UB Railways. So because the price is so low, they cannot have accumulation of money which is necessary for making new power stations. Mostly power stations because Mongolia has the only coal, and that as a source of electric energy. That's the first reason. The second reason, because we don't have money, we need foreign money. Russia and China, two neighbors, are ready to help us to supply that money, but somehow cannot organize it. Good example is power station number 5. We have been talking about that for last almost 30 years, and for even 10 times we made the laying foundation of these power stations, and then finally they decided, no, we will not make it. Because we will make one in South Gobi, no need of power station number 5. The other reason why this power station number 5 was not made is because of conflict of interests, I would say. Because every new minister was changing the project. It goes 10 times. So that's why this project is stopped. Well, the second topic we want to cover this time is the supply chain issue of fuel from Russia. According to the Minister of Mining and Heavy Industry, Mr. Gambatar, we had a supply problem for last 21 days because the supply from Russia was not coming on time. It was delayed and delayed. But however, a source says that at the time when now we have a BQ gasoline supply stations, mostly they want to buy the gasoline A92. It's the cheapest gasoline, and the state is restricting the price. So that's why it's priced 2 times less than, for example, CAI 95. Initially, the 92 was in demand, but now both. So that's what the minister said. And because we are 100% dependent on Russia in terms of food supply, Mongolia is trying to buy it also from China, though it is a bit, maybe 10% or so, 15%, more expensive than the Chinese, Russians one. Because the Russians one, in particular, Angarsk refinery, which is the closest supplier to Mongolia, within 5 days we can get in Ulaanbaatar. But somehow now that's the problem, because we have a huge, according to a source in the northern border, in the Russian side. On the Russian side we have 500, we call that silos, or we call it cistern, of the fuel stuck. And many people say that it is because Mongols now want to have the ordered supply from China. And from China it takes longer time because you need to convert all load to the wider range, wider gauge of railways. That's always a problem with China in terms of the difference of gauges of the railways. So as a result, we have a problem, and people are now queuing for very long a kilometer or so line I saw today at one of the central location gas stations. Why we are facing this situation? First, again, the price issue. Government is controlling the price of the cheapest gasoline, for example, at the lower level. And if the government was not restricting, if let the market doing their jobs, I think the supply could be much better. Because the people know that people can plan that their supply conditions and prices can be changed depending on the international price, international conditions. So now the petroleum price comes down substantially all around the world. Russia had decreased the price from $930 per ton to $855. Yet we have restricted the constant price for gasoline in the country. So if the market will do their job, I think the supply will be much better, and at least there will never will be deficit. So these both issues of electric energy and the fuel raise one question: how can we deal with Russia? How can we have non-interrupting supply of these two important products to Mongolia? So it raised an issue of strategic partnership issues. I think Mongolia needs now to reconsider its economic balance in between two countries, in between China and Russia. We need to have equal relations with China and Russia. But the equilibrium is already past. We don't have an equality now of two countries. China is a completely dominant in economy of Mongolia. Russia's role is becoming less and less. It's raising a serious issue because Mongolia, we need to have the balance in the relations with China and Russia. Now also we have a concept called third neighbor, and we need to bring this third neighbor also to the table. And they ideally should have each 30%. But China is surpassing everything now. That's why we need to reconsider our foreign policy in economic terms, which the Central Asian countries do recently. They have been the 5 countries of Central Russia, former Soviet Union, parts of Soviet Union. They have been considering why? Because Russia is becoming weaker, at least in terms during this war. Russia was a military power, but it is an empire, and it is becoming weaker. The situation in Ukraine shows it clearly. So once big empire is weakening, and that space, China is not in a hurry to fulfill. The Western countries are becoming very active in these 5 countries. Take Kazakhstan, for example. For the last 6 months, Kazakhstan attracted around 5 billion euro foreign investment from European Union. It's a big, substantial amount. And according to Prime Minister of Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan is creating the most favorable business conditions comparable to long-term international international investment example. And Kazakhstan doing it good. That's why Kazakhstan has this kind of large investment from Western Europe. Kazakhstan yet is making good economic relations with Russia. They have recently agreed to make in 3 cities 3 new power stations, coal-embed power stations. So Mongolia is really, to me, need to reconsider the strategy in order to have balanced investment from Russia, because we have no other choice. And we must have Russia and China investment as much as possible, more or less equal to each other. which is already disbalanced now. We have almost 70-80% in the economy from Chinese investment. And yet we need to attract investment from the third neighbor, and only France is now almost coming to the conclusion of the agreement in terms of exploring and producing uranium in Mongolia. That's why, for example, Russia is interested to work in the renovation of the power station number 3. Maybe we need to work on that with Russia. Though our energy minister said that Russian price is very high. But it's a good time for Russia to invest into Mongolia because the Western sanctions, and hopefully they would agree at the price of the power stations. And probably it should be it is much better to get the loan in the rubles, not in euros, not in US dollars. And we'll pay that amount of rubles when it's necessary. Yes, that ruble can be comparable to today's rate of euro, but it was being nominated, the whole contract to be nominated in the rubles. And when we will pay that ruble with the rate agreed in this contract. So hopefully we will have it done. The other issue now with Russia is the payment issue. Because the Western sanctions, Mongolians have a problem with payment to Russia, and that's why many economic transactions are not happening in between Mongolia and Russia. Mongolia is not in sanctions, so and then our Western partners understand the situation of Mongolia, so we are not under that Western sanctions. So this is a real situation today in Mongolia, and this both issue of supply of electric energy and fuel clearly show again how much we are dependent on Russia and also on China, and we need to rebalance back these relations because it's important for our independence, sovereignty, and probably we need to reconsider that to get a balanced approach to the issue. So today at our review we have covered two issues of supply of energy and supply of fuel from Russia. Again, thank you very much for being with us, and see you next week again. Bye now.